In this episode, we are going to slow down and look directly at what cloud attackers actually want, because defensive clarity starts with understanding motivation. When learners jump straight into controls without thinking about incentives, security can feel like a checklist rather than a strategy. Attackers are not acting randomly, and they are not all chasing the same prize, which means your defensive thinking has to be grounded in realistic goals. By identifying high-probability attacker objectives, you begin to see why certain cloud assets are repeatedly targeted. Once you understand the incentives and target choices, the rest of cloud defense starts to feel more coherent and less overwhelming. The goal here is not to dramatize threats, but to calmly recognize patterns that show up again and again. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. One of the most common attacker goals in cloud environments is financial gain, and that financial motive can take several forms. Some attackers seek direct access to sensitive data that can be sold, such as personal information, intellectual property, or confidential business records. Others aim to deploy unauthorized compute workloads, such as cryptocurrency mining, to generate revenue by abusing your cloud resources. In both cases, the attacker sees your cloud account as an opportunity to extract value. When you think about financial incentive, you begin to understand why storage services, database systems, and powerful compute instances are attractive targets. The cloud centralizes valuable assets, and centralization often amplifies reward for attackers. Another frequent goal is espionage, which includes both corporate and geopolitical motives. In this case, the attacker may not want immediate profit, but instead seeks long-term access to information that provides competitive or strategic advantage. Cloud environments often host development pipelines, design documents, analytics data, and internal communications, all of which can be highly valuable. Because the cloud aggregates these resources behind identity systems, gaining a foothold in the right account can expose wide-ranging information. Espionage-driven attackers are often patient and focused on maintaining access quietly. When you understand that patience, you begin to see why detection and monitoring are as important as prevention. Disruption is another powerful incentive, particularly in environments that support critical services or public-facing applications. An attacker motivated by disruption may attempt to delete resources, alter configurations, or deny access to legitimate users. In cloud systems, where infrastructure is controlled through centralized interfaces, a compromised administrative identity can cause rapid and widespread impact. This makes privileged accounts especially attractive targets for attackers seeking disruption. When you identify this goal, you see why least privilege and strong identity controls are so heavily emphasized in cloud defense. The goal is not only to protect data, but to preserve operational continuity. Cloud attackers also pursue access as a stepping stone rather than as a final objective. In many cases, the cloud environment becomes a platform for launching further attacks, either against the same organization or against external targets. For example, compromised compute resources might be used to scan other networks or to host malicious content. From the attacker's perspective, cloud infrastructure provides scalability and legitimacy because traffic originating from reputable cloud providers may not immediately raise suspicion. This secondary use of compromised accounts explains why monitoring for unusual outbound activity is important. It also reinforces the idea that your cloud is not isolated from the broader internet ecosystem. When we shift from goals to target choices, identity systems quickly emerge as high-probability targets. In the cloud, identity is the control plane for almost everything, from creating resources to accessing data. If an attacker can compromise credentials or abuse identity policies, they can often move laterally and escalate privileges without exploiting software vulnerabilities. This makes user accounts, service accounts, access keys, and role definitions central points of interest. Attackers understand that controlling identity often means controlling the environment. As a defender, recognizing identity as a prime target helps you focus attention where it has the greatest leverage. Data storage services are also frequent targets because they often contain concentrated value. Misconfigured storage buckets, overly permissive database access rules, or publicly exposed backups have led to numerous breaches. Attackers may not need sophisticated techniques if simple misconfiguration exposes sensitive data. In cloud environments, convenience features can sometimes lead to accidental overexposure, especially when default settings are not carefully reviewed. When you understand that storage misconfigurations are common, you begin to appreciate why guardrails and validation are essential. Targeting data directly is often faster and more profitable for attackers than attempting deeper system compromise. Administrative interfaces and management consoles represent another attractive target category. These interfaces provide centralized control over cloud resources, and access to them can allow rapid modification of infrastructure. Attackers may attempt credential phishing, token theft, or exploitation of weak authentication mechanisms to gain entry. Once inside, they can create new users, alter permissions, or spin up resources for malicious purposes. The power of these interfaces means they require strong protection and monitoring. Recognizing their value to attackers reinforces the need for layered identity defenses. Another high-probability target is the configuration layer itself, particularly infrastructure defined as code or automation templates. If attackers can modify deployment templates or automated pipelines, they can introduce malicious configurations at scale. This approach can provide persistence and stealth because compromised configurations may look legitimate if not carefully reviewed. In cloud environments that rely heavily on automation, control over templates can be as powerful as control over running systems. Understanding this risk shifts defensive attention toward change management and validation processes. It also highlights that attackers do not always need to attack live systems directly. They can attack the mechanisms that create them. Incentives also influence how noisy or quiet an attacker might be. Financially motivated attackers using stolen compute for mining may generate noticeable resource spikes, while espionage-focused actors may deliberately minimize activity to avoid detection. This variation affects how defenders prioritize detection strategies. If you only look for loud anomalies, you may miss slow, deliberate data access patterns. Understanding attacker incentives helps you anticipate behavioral signatures rather than assuming a single attack style. The exam often tests whether you can infer likely objectives from subtle clues in a scenario. Cloud attackers also frequently exploit trust relationships between accounts or services. If one environment trusts another for data sharing or identity federation, compromising the weaker link can open the stronger one. These trust relationships are often necessary for business functionality, but they also expand the attack surface. Attackers look for indirect paths that bypass stronger controls by leveraging weaker integrations. Recognizing that trust boundaries are target choices helps you design segmentation and monitoring strategies that reduce risk. It also prepares you to evaluate scenario questions where compromise originates from a connected but less secure environment. Another factor influencing target choice is ease of automation. Cloud platforms are programmable by design, which means attackers can automate discovery, exploitation, and persistence once access is obtained. Automated enumeration of permissions or rapid creation of resources can amplify impact quickly. Attackers prefer targets that scale, and the cloud's scalability can work against defenders if controls are weak. Understanding this dynamic encourages defensive strategies that limit broad permissions and detect rapid changes. It also reinforces the importance of logging and alerting for abnormal activity patterns. Ultimately, identifying high-probability attacker goals, incentives, and target choices provides a mental filter for everything else you learn in cloud defense. When you hear about a control, you should immediately connect it to the attacker behavior it disrupts. Financial gain, espionage, disruption, and misuse of infrastructure are recurring motives, and identity systems, storage services, administrative interfaces, and automation layers are recurring targets. By internalizing these patterns, you begin to anticipate risk rather than reacting to it. On the exam, this anticipation helps you choose answers that align with realistic threat models instead of theoretical possibilities. In practice, it helps you build defenses that reflect how and why cloud attacks actually happen.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.